The ICU smelled like disinfectant and dying flowers. My father's hand felt cold in mine, his breathing shallow and mechanical through the ventilator. I'd been sitting in that plastic chair for 6 hours straight when Elena, the night nurse, slipped into the room with a manila folder clutched against her chest, like a secret too dangerous to speak aloud. "Sarah," she whispered, glancing at the doorway, "can we talk? Privately?" I followed her to the nurse's station, my legs numb from sitting, my mind numb from 3 weeks of watching my father struggle for every breath after his second stroke. Elena's hands trembled as she opened the folder. "Your family has been lying about everything." 5 words. That's all it took to shatter the reality I'd been living in for 3 years. She spread documents across the counter, bank statements, property deeds, a power of attorney I'd never seen before, my father's shaky signature, except it wasn't shaky. It was too perfect, too practiced, too fake. "I found these in his bedside drawer," Elena said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "He's been trying to tell us something for months, but your brother and sister kept saying it was just stroke confusion. Sarah, I've been a nurse for 22 years. I know the difference between confusion and desperation." My eyes scanned the numbers. Transfers, withdrawals, sales, properties I'd grown up in, sold for $1 each. To my siblings, $2.3 million. Gone. Drained from accounts, while I was downstairs making my father soup, changing his sheets, holding his hand through physical therapy sessions where he wept because he couldn't remember my mother's face anymore. When did this happen? My voice sounded strange, distant. The timestamps match up with his medication schedule. Every single transfer occurred within 72 hours of him receiving heavy sedation. Elena's jaw clenched. "There's security footage of your brother and sister coming in with a notary, 20 minutes after the sedation. 20 minutes. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Someone's heart monitor beeped steadily down the hall. My own heart felt like it had stopped beating entirely. 3 years. I'd given up my career as a forensic accountant to care for my mother through cancer, then stayed to help my father recover. My daughter switched schools. I emptied my savings. I became just a nurse in their eyes. My brother Marcus, the hotshot attorney. My sister Jessica, the real estate mogul. And me, the family servant. The devoted fool who believed we were all in this together. But here's what Marcus and Jessica didn't know. I wasn't just a nurse. I was a forensic accountant who'd spent 15 years tracking financial criminals before burnout drove me to caregiving. I still had my CPA license. I still had my software. I still had my skills. And most importantly, I'd been documenting everything. Every conversation, every dismissive text, every time they called me paranoid for asking questions, every cruel joke they made about our dying father in the family group chat. They wanted a victim. They were about to learn they'd created a hunter. If you want to see how this story of betrayal turns into perfect justice, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss what happens when karma has a forensic accountant's precision. 3 years ago, I was Sarah Mitchell, CPA, Senior Forensic Accountant at Brennan & Associates, the woman who'd sent 12 executives to federal prison for embezzlement. I had a corner office, a 6-figure salary, and a reputation that made corrupt CFOs sweat during depositions. Then my mother called. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, 6 months maybe. I took a leave of absence that became permanent. Because here's the thing about watching someone you love die slowly. You can't half commit. You can't check emails between morphine doses. You can't take conference calls while your mother vomits from chemo. So I didn't. I walked away from everything. Marcus sent flowers to the funeral. Jessica posted a touching tribute on Facebook about our angel mother. Neither of them took more than 3 days off work. Dad fell apart after Mom died. Robert Mitchell, the man who'd built a commercial real estate empire from nothing, who'd negotiated million-dollar deals without flinching, couldn't remember to eat breakfast, couldn't sleep in their bed, would stand in her closet holding her dresses, weeping like a child. "Stay a little longer," he'd said, his voice breaking, "just until I can manage on my own." That was 3 years ago. The first stroke hit 18 months after Mom's funeral. Dad was reading the newspaper when the left side of his face went slack. I was the one who caught him as he fell. I was the one who rode in the ambulance, holding his hand while he tried to speak and couldn't. I was the one who stayed every single night in the hospital, sleeping in the chair beside his bed because he'd panic when he woke up alone. Marcus visited twice. Jessica came once, spent 20 minutes on her phone, then left because she had a property closing. "You're so good at this caregiving thing," Jessica had said, patting my arm. "It's like you were meant to be a nurse or something." I let her believe that. Let them both believe I'd somehow forgotten everything I'd learned about following money trails, about document forensics, about the patterns of financial fraud. It was easier that way. Easier than explaining that I was too tired, too grief-stricken, too focused on keeping my father alive to care about my old career. My daughter Emma had taken it hard. She'd gone from a 15-year-old with friends and activities and a mother who could afford to give her things, to a 16-year-old who'd switched schools, whose college fund I'd drained to cover family expenses, who spent weekends helping me change her grandfather's sheets and cook his meals. "Mom, when are Uncle Marcus and Aunt Jessica going to help?" she'd asked once. "They're busy, sweetheart. They have their own lives." "But you had a life, too." I didn't have an answer for that. The expenses kept coming. Property taxes on the house, Dad's medications, medical equipment, home health aides when I needed to sleep. I'd burned through my savings in 14 months. When I'd asked Marcus and Jessica to chip in, they were, after all, going to inherit equally, they'd agreed immediately. "Of course," Marcus had said. "Keep track of everything. We'll reimburse you." I kept meticulous records, every receipt, every invoice, every expense logged in a spreadsheet that grew longer each month. $27,000, $34,000, $41,000, $52,000 of my money keeping their father alive and comfortable. The reimbursement never came. "Oh, we'll settle up when Dad's estate is finalized," Jessica had said breezily. "It'll all come out in the wash." I should have known then, should have recognized the language. When the estate is finalized meant when he's dead. But I was too exhausted to think like a forensic accountant anymore. I was just trying to survive each day. The family text group should have been my second clue. Marcus had created it for coordination, he'd said, to keep everyone informed about Dad's condition, except the messages were never really about Dad. I pulled out my phone now, standing in that hospital hallway with Elena's documents spread before me, and scrolled back through months of texts. How had I not seen it? Marcus. "The servant is probably spoon-feeding Dad right now." Jessica. "At least Sarah's keeping him alive. Free nursing care means more left for us." Marcus. "Silver lining. We won't have to pay for a nursing home. Sarah's got it handled." Jessica. "Think she's figured out we're not reimbursing her?" Marcus. "Please. She's too busy playing Florence Nightingale to do the math." Jessica. "Dad barely recognizes anyone anyway. Perfect timing for the transfers." Marcus. "POA is finalized. Notary didn't ask questions. $5,000 well spent." Jessica. "When do we move the Brookfield properties?" Marcus. "Already done. $1 each." My hands shook as I read. The messages went back months, a year. They'd been planning this since before Dad's first stroke. Since Mom's funeral, probably. The sick feeling in my stomach crystallized into something harder, sharper. "Sarah?" Elena's voice pulled me back. "There's more." She handed me a stack of medical records, tabs marking specific pages, nursing notes from the past 8 months. I read them with growing horror. July 15th. Patient states, papers wrong, repeatedly. Family present dismissed as confusion related to stroke. Patient became agitated. Sedative administered. August 3rd. Patient crying. Pointing at documents on bedside table. Attempted to tell nurse they lied, but speech severely impaired. Daughter Sarah not present. Son Marcus stated patient is getting worse cognitively. September 12th. Patient extremely distressed during sibling visit. Kept shaking head, saying, "No sign, no sign." Sister Jessica assured staff patient is just having a bad day. Patient calmed only when daughter Sarah returned. October 8th. Found patient attempting to hide documents under mattress. Patient's agitation decreased when documents secured in bedside drawer. Made note for social services, follow-up. He'd been trying to tell them, trying to warn someone. And they'd all dismissed it as stroke confusion because Marcus and Jessica had convinced everyone that was all it was. The timestamp, Elena said quietly, pulling out another document. Security logs. September 22nd, 10:47 a.m. Robert Mitchell received 10 lorazepam for anxiety and agitation. September 22nd, 11:03 a.m. Marcus Mitchell, Jessica Thornton, and Notary Public Linda Vasquez entered room 4B. September 22nd, 11:31 a.m. Visitors exited. September 22nd, 2:15 p.m. Robert Mitchell woke, agitated, nonverbal. 20 minutes after sedation, I said, my voice hollow. Heavy sedation, Elena corrected. That dose would have made him completely compliant, barely conscious. Sarah, I've reviewed the power of attorney paperwork. The date on those documents matches this timestamp. I looked at the POA. My father's signature was there, neat and controlled. Too neat, too controlled. Dad's handwriting after the stroke had been shaky, uncertain. This signature was practiced, forged. They drugged him and forged his signature. I'm not supposed to make accusations, Elena said carefully, but I'm looking at medical records that say your father was heavily sedated during the exact time he supposedly signed legal documents giving away power of attorney. And I'm looking at months of nursing notes showing he tried to report it and was dismissed. Sarah, this is elder financial abuse. Textbook case. The documents Elena had found in Dad's bedside drawer told the rest of the story. Bank statements he'd somehow managed to request before losing his communication abilities, property deeds, investment account summaries, all showing the same pattern. $2.3 million transferred from Robert Mitchell's accounts to Marcus Mitchell and Jessica Thornton. 3 rental properties, the Brookfield triplex, the downtown commercial building, the lakeside duplex, all sold to my siblings for $1 each. The house we were standing in, the house I'd grown up in, the house where I currently live taking care of my father, deed transferred to Jessica Thornton. Dad's vintage Porsche, gifted to Marcus. The sailboat Dad and Mom had bought for retirement, gifted to Jessica. His stock portfolio, liquidated and transferred. His retirement accounts, somehow impossibly drained. That should have been impossible without his direct authorization, which meant they'd forged more than just the POA. I did the math in my head, the old skills coming back like muscle memory. $15,000 per month, showing as caregiver fees, paid to Marcus and Jessica, starting 2 months after Dad's first stroke. Money supposedly compensating them for caregiving services, services they'd never provided, services I'd provided for free while they collected a paycheck. 18 months times $30,000 per month split between them. $540,000 in fraudulent caregiver fees alone. My vision blurred, not with tears, I was beyond tears, with rage, pure crystalline rage. I need to make copies of everything, I said. Elena nodded. There's a quiet room down the hall. Use it as long as you need. The quiet room was meant for families receiving bad news. Pastoral paintings of beaches, soft lighting, a box of tissues on the table. I ignored all of it, pulling out my laptop for the first time in over a year. The screen glowed to life. My old desktop image, Emma laughing back when things were normal, felt like looking at a photograph from someone else's life. I navigated to my documents folder. The forensic software I'd used at Brennan & Associates was still there. Fraud Finder Pro, Timeline Analysis Suite, Document Authentication Tools. I'd paid for lifetime licenses. The programs recognized my credentials immediately. My fingers flew across the keyboard, muscle memory taking over. import documents, scan for date stamps, cross-reference transactions, build timeline, flag inconsistencies, map relationships, calculate damages. This was what I did. This was what I'd been trained to do. Find the pattern in the chaos, follow the money, build the case. The timeline populated on screen, a visual map of systematic theft. Month 1, power of attorney forged, small test transfer, $50,000. Month 2, larger transfer, $200,000. Property deed transfer, Brookfield triplex. Month 3, caregiver fees. Begin $15,000 monthly to each sibling. Month 4, investment accounts liquidated, $680,000. The pattern continued month after month, a masterclass in financial elder abuse. And I'd been too exhausted, too grief-stricken, too trusting to see it happening under my nose. They'd isolated Dad socially, dismissing visitors as too tiring for him. They'd controlled the narrative with his doctors, painting his attempts to communicate as cognitive decline. They'd manipulated me into being the full-time caregiver, ensuring I was too busy to ask questions about finances. It was brilliant, really. Textbook financial exploitation. I opened a new document and began typing. Not a timeline this time, a strategy. Because Marcus and Jessica had made one critical error in their perfect crime. They'd underestimated who they were stealing from. Not just Dad. They were stealing from the daughter of Robert Mitchell, yes, but they were also stealing from Sarah Mitchell, CPA, forensic accountant, the woman who'd made a career of dismantling schemes exactly like this one. And I'd been documenting everything. Every text message was backed up to cloud storage. Every conversation I'd had with them in the past 3 months recorded with my phone's voice memo app, legal in our state with single-party consent. Every receipt, every expense, every promise they'd made and broken, logged in spreadsheets they didn't know existed. I'd been doing it unconsciously at first, the old habits dying hard. But now I understood what those habits had been preparing me for. This moment. This reckoning. I saved the document, closed my laptop, and walked back to Dad's room. He was sleeping, the ventilator breathing for him, his face peaceful in unconsciousness. I took his hand gently. "I see it now, Dad," I whispered. "I see what they did. And I'm going to make it right." Elena appeared in the doorway. "Do you need anything?" "A lawyer," I said. "One who specializes in elder financial abuse, and a patient advocate to document everything in his medical file, and copies of all security footage from the past 18 months. Elena smiled grimly. "I'll make some calls." I looked down at my phone, at the family text group where Marcus and Jessica were probably already planning how to spend their inheritance. They wanted a servant. They thought they'd found a victim. They were about to learn they had created a hunter, and the hunt had just begun. The next morning, I arrived at the hospital with coffee and a smile plastered on my face, the same smile I'd worn for 3 years, the devoted daughter, the selfless caregiver. The woman too tired and too naive to see what was happening right in front of her. Marcus was already in Dad's room, scrolling through his phone. He barely glanced up when I entered. "Morning," I said brightly, setting down the coffee tray. "Brought your favorite, triple shot latte, right?" He looked surprised. "Oh, thanks, Sarah." He took the coffee, still not quite looking at me. "How's Dad doing?" "About the same. The doctors think the swelling might start reducing in the next few days." I busied myself adjusting Dad's blankets, checking his IV lines, playing my part perfectly. "That's good. That's really good." Marcus went back to his phone. "Listen, I've got a deposition at 10. Can you handle things here?" "Of course. I always do." He left without saying goodbye to Dad, didn't even look at him. I waited until his footsteps faded down the hallway, then pulled out my phone and opened the voice recording app. Every conversation from now on would be documented. Every word they said would be evidence. Elena knocked softly before entering. "Sarah, there's someone I'd like you to meet. Catherine Morrison, she's our patient advocate." Catherine was in her 50s, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and the kind of no-nonsense energy that suggested she'd seen everything and wouldn't tolerate any garbage. We shook hands. Elena told me about your situation, Catherine said, closing the door behind her. I've pulled your father's complete medical file, all nursing notes, physician assessments, medication records, everything. These are copies for you. She handed me a thick folder. The originals are now flagged in our system as evidence in a potential elder abuse case. My throat tightened. Thank you. There's more. Catherine sat down, pulling out a tablet. I've documented every visit from your siblings over the past 18 months. Timestamps, duration, behaviors observed by staff. Sarah, the pattern is damning. Your brother and sister have spent a combined total of 11 hours visiting your father. You've been here every single day, averaging 14 hours. The nurses have extensive notes about their behavior versus yours. Small victory. 1. Evidence even I hadn't thought to gather. Can I get copies of all that? Already done. But there's something else you need to know. Catherine's expression hardened. 3 months ago, your sister approached the director of our long-term care facility. Asked about costs, availability, and specifically whether patients could be placed without consent from all family members. She was pricing out nursing homes. The coffee in my stomach turned acidic. While I was still caring for him at home. While you were still caring for him at home, Catherine confirmed. The director noted it seemed premature given your father's condition at the time. Now it makes more sense, doesn't it? Get him institutionalized, sell the house, liquidate everything while he's too incapacitated to object. I thought about the house deed, already transferred to Jessica. They'd been planning to kick me out, too. Force me and Emma onto the street while they cashed in on real estate they'd stolen. I need a lawyer, I said. Catherine smiled. Already ahead of you. There's a social worker on staff, David Chen. His wife is Patricia Chen, one of the best elder law attorneys in the state. She specializes in financial abuse cases, lost her own mother to something similar. Now she takes these cases pro bono when she can. David's willing to make an introduction. 2 hours later, I sat in a hospital conference room across from Patricia Chen. She was petite, impeccably dressed, with silver hair cut in a sharp bob and eyes that missed nothing. She'd brought her associate, a younger man named Michael Torres, who specialized in forensic financial investigations. Tell me everything, Patricia said, pulling out a legal pad. I did. Every detail, every transfer, every forged signature, every lie. As I spoke, Michael opened his laptop and began building a digital file, organizing documents I'd brought, cross-referencing them with the medical records Catherine had provided. When I finished, Patricia leaned back in her chair. Her expression was calm, but her eyes burned with something that looked like righteous fury. Sarah, in my 20 years of practicing elder law, this is one of the most clear-cut cases of financial exploitation I've ever seen. Your siblings didn't just commit fraud, they documented it. They were arrogant enough to believe they wouldn't get caught. Can we prove it? Oh, we can prove it. Michael turned his laptop around. On screen was a timeline he'd constructed in the 30 minutes I'd been talking. Every transfer mapped against medical records showing Dad's cognitive state at the time. Every single fraudulent transaction occurred within 72 hours of your father receiving heavy sedation or immediately after a medical event when he was clearly incapacitated. The power of attorney itself was signed when medical records show he was unconscious. Patricia nodded. We're filing for emergency guardianship immediately. You'll petition the court to become your father's legal guardian, which will void the fraudulent POA and give you authority to act on his behalf. Once that's granted, we reverse every transfer, pursue criminal charges, and sue for damages, including the caregiver fees you should have received. Small victory number 2. A warrior in my corner. Someone who understood what this was and knew how to fight it. There's one critical thing, Patricia said, her voice dropping. Your siblings cannot know we're building this case. Not yet. Right now, they think they've gotten away with it. That arrogance will make them sloppy. They'll say things, do things that will become evidence. Sarah, can you maintain your current demeanor? Can you be the devoted, naive daughter for a few more weeks? Could I? Could I smile at Marcus and Jessica while knowing what they'd done? Could I pretend everything was fine while building the case that would destroy them? I thought about my father lying in that hospital bed, unable to speak, unable to defend himself. I thought about the nursing notes where he'd tried to warn people and been dismissed. I thought about Emma, who'd given up her childhood so I could care for a grandfather. Her aunt and uncle were robbing blind. "Yes," I said. "I can do that." "Good." Patricia smiled. And it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator spotting wounded prey. Don't let them know anything yet. Let them think they're winning. Let them get comfortable. The more evidence we gather, the harder they fall. Over the next week, I became the perfect actress. I answered Marcus's texts immediately, always deferential, always agreeable. When Jessica called to check in on Dad, which she did twice, both times while shopping, the sound of store music clear in the background, I gave detailed updates and thanked her profusely for caring so much. "You're such a good sister," I told her during one call, my voice warm. "Dad's lucky to have you." "Oh, well, family comes first, right?" Jessica said breezily. "How are you holding up, Sarah? You sound tired." "I'm managing. It's just hard, you know." "I can imagine. Listen, Marcus and I have been talking, and we think maybe it's time to discuss long-term care options. You can't keep doing this forever." My hand tightened on the phone. "Long-term care?" "A facility, professional care. Sarah, you've sacrificed so much already, it's not fair to you or Emma." How generous, how concerned, how perfectly timed now that they'd already stolen the house. "Let me think about it," I said carefully. "Can we talk more when Dad's out of ICU?" "Of course. No rush. We just want what's best for everyone." I hung up and immediately pulled out my notebook, documented the call, date, time, content, tone, everything admissible in court. My former life kept providing unexpected gifts. While organizing Dad's medical bills, I'd noticed the name of the account manager at his primary bank, Jennifer Voss. The name had nagged at me for days until I finally placed it. Jennifer Voss, formerly Jennifer Chen, my colleague from Brennan and Associates. We'd worked together on a massive corporate fraud case 5 years ago. I called the bank and asked for her. She came on the line immediately. "Sarah Mitchell? Oh my God, I haven't heard from you in years. How are you?" We caught up briefly, professional courtesy before I explained why I was really calling. There was a long pause after I finished. "Sarah, I can't give you specific account information without proper authorization," Jennifer said carefully, "but I can tell you that several months ago I filed an internal suspicious activity report regarding unusual transactions on Robert Mitchell's accounts, large transfers, pattern inconsistent with historical activity, rapid asset liquidation. It got flagged by our fraud detection system. Small victory number 4. The bank had noticed. Someone else had seen it." "What happened to the report?" Another pause. "It was reviewed by a senior manager and closed. The note said family members with valid power of attorney were managing the account. No further action needed. But Sarah, I've been doing this for 15 years. Those transfers looked wrong. I tried to reach out to your father directly, but I was told he was unavailable due to medical issues." "He had a stroke. He couldn't communicate." "Then they shouldn't have been making those transfers," Jennifer said quietly. "Sarah, if you're building a case, I'll testify. Off the record? I think your siblings committed fraud, and I think my bank should have investigated more thoroughly." I hung up and added Jennifer's name to my growing list of witnesses. The case was building, piece by piece, document by document, but I still had to play the devoted daughter. Had to smile and nod and pretend I didn't see the knife sticking out of my back. The hardest part was looking at Dad, seeing him lie there, helpless, while the people who should have protected him robbed him blind. But every time I wanted to scream, every time the rage threatened to overwhelm the facade, I reminded myself, patience. They'd spent 3 years building their crime. I could spend 3 weeks building their prison. The family meeting happened 2 weeks after Elena's revelation. Marcus called it very official, very businesslike. "We need to discuss Dad's situation," he'd said. "All three of us together. Time to make some decisions." They chose a conference room at Marcus's law firm. Power play, putting me on their turf. Jessica arrived first, dressed in an expensive suit, her jewelry catching the light. Marcus came in right on time, carrying a leather portfolio that probably cost more than my monthly expenses. I arrived last deliberately, worn jeans, tired eyes, apologetic smile. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible." "No problem," Marcus said, gesturing to a chair. He sat at the head of the conference table. Of course he did. "Sarah, we wanted to talk about Dad's care situation. Jessica and I have been reviewing the options." I pulled out a notebook, the decoy one, not the real documentation I was keeping. "Okay, what are you thinking?" "Well," Jessica leaned forward, her expression carefully sympathetic. "You've been amazing, Sarah, truly. The sacrifices you've made, the time you've devoted. But it's been 3 years. That's not sustainable." "We think it's time to consider a professional facility," Marcus added. "Dad needs round-the-clock medical care. He needs physical therapy, occupational therapy, specialists, things that are beyond what one person can provide at home." They'd rehearsed this. I could hear it in the way their statements dovetailed perfectly, each building on the other's point. Good cop, both of them reasonable, both of them concerned. "Whatever you think is best," I said softly. "You both are so much smarter about these things than I am." I watched something flicker across Marcus's face. Satisfaction, relief, the look of a predator realizing its prey wasn't going to fight back. "We've already toured a few places," Jessica said, pulling out brochures. "This one is particularly nice. Full medical staff, beautiful grounds. Dad would be very comfortable there." I looked at the brochure, Whispering Pines Extended Care. $4,500 a month for shared room, $7,000 for private. Medicare didn't cover it. Dad would have to pay out of pocket from accounts they'd already drained. "How would we afford this?" I asked, keeping my voice uncertain, worried, playing dumb beautifully. "Don't worry about that," Marcus said quickly. "Dad has resources. The POA allows Jessica and me to manage his finances. We'll make sure everything's covered." Small victory. They'd just admitted the POA existed, admitted they were managing Dad's finances, assumed I didn't understand what that meant legally. "That's such a relief," I said. "I've been so worried about money. I've spent so much already, and I know you said you'd reimburse me eventually, but we'll settle all that when things stabilize," Jessica interrupted smoothly. "Right now, the priority is getting Dad proper care." "When would this happen?" "Soon, maybe next week. The facility has an opening." Marcus pulled out a contract. "We just need you to sign off that you agree with the plan. Since you're living in the house, we want to make sure you're on board." Living in the house they'd already stolen. I looked at the document. It was dressed up in legal language, but what it actually said was, "Sarah Mitchell agrees to the placement of Robert Mitchell in extended care and acknowledges that Marcus Mitchell and Jessica Thornton have legal authority to make all decisions regarding his care and assets. If I signed this, I'd be legitimizing everything they'd done, agreeing that they had the right to manage Dad's money, move him wherever they wanted, sell the house out from under me." "Can I think about it?" I asked. "Just a day or two? It's such a big decision." Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Sarah, we don't really have time to—" "Of course you can," Jessica interjected, shooting Marcus a look. "This is emotional for all of us. Take a day. But Sarah, honestly, this is happening whether you agree or not. We have the legal authority. We're just trying to keep you in the loop out of respect." There it was, the velvet glove removed. We own him now. We can do whatever we want. "I understand," I said quietly. "Thank you for including me." After I left, I sat in my car in the parking garage and let the recording app run for another 30 seconds, capturing Marcus and Jessica's voices as they talked in the conference room. not realizing I'd left my phone behind, tucked under a folder on the table. Actually believes we're doing this for Dad's benefit, Jessica's voice laughing. I told you she wouldn't figure it out. She's been changing bedpans for 3 years. That's not exactly forensic accounting. Marcus's voice amused. When do we list the house? As soon as he's in the facility. I've already got a real estate agent lined up. Market's hot right now. We could clear $800,000 easy. Sarah's going to lose her mind when she finds out we already transferred the deed. By then, it won't matter. What's she gonna do, sue us? With what money? I retrieved my phone and drove home, my hands steady on the wheel. Got them. Every word recorded, every admission captured. The following week, I made friends in the ICU. It wasn't hard. I was there every day anyway, and other families in crisis recognized a kindred spirit. There was Martha, whose husband was recovering from heart surgery, David and Karen, whose teenage son had been in a motorcycle accident, and Patricia, different Patricia, not my lawyer, whose elderly mother had pneumonia. We bonded over terrible hospital coffee and shared fears. And naturally, when my siblings visited, these new friends noticed their behavior. "Are those your brother and sister?" Martha asked one day after Marcus and Jessica had left following a 15-minute visit where they'd spent 12 minutes on their phones. "Yeah," I said quietly. "They don't seem very—" She trailed off diplomatically. "Involved," I finished. "They're busy, important careers. You're here every day, honey, for hours." Martha's expression was sympathetic. "That's real family." I filed that away. Patricia Chen had told me character witnesses would be crucial, people who'd observed the family dynamic firsthand, who could testify about who actually provided care versus who claimed credit. David's wife, Karen, was a paralegal. When I casually mentioned my siblings had power of attorney and were making financial decisions for Dad, her eyebrows shot up. "While you're the one doing all the caregiving? That seems odd." "I think it makes sense. They're better with money stuff." "Sarah, I work in estate law. POA is supposed to go to the person who's most involved in the patient's daily life, the person who knows their needs, their wishes. That's you, not them." Small victory number 5, or maybe victory number 10 by now, I was losing count. More witnesses, more people who'd seen the truth and would testify to it. But the most powerful testimony came from an unexpected source. Emma had been quiet about the situation, mature beyond her 16 years, understanding that we were in crisis mode. But one evening, after a particularly exhausting day at the hospital, she found me crying in the kitchen. "Mom, what's wrong?" I shouldn't have told her, should have protected her from the ugly adult reality of betrayal and theft, but I was so tired. And she deserved to know why our lives had been turned upside down. I explained everything. The fraud, the theft, the systematic stealing from her grandfather. Emma listened in silence, her face going from confused to shocked to angry. "They stole from Grandpa? While you were taking care of him?" "Yes." "And they made fun of you for it?" "Yes." Emma's hands clenched into fists. "That's not okay, Mom. That's not right." "I know, baby, and I'm fixing it, but it takes time." She was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then, what if I recorded something? Like a testimony or whatever, about what I've seen? Would that help? I looked at my daughter, this fierce, protective, brilliant young woman who'd lost so much already because I'd chosen to care for my parents, and here she was, offering to fight for us. That would help tremendously. We recorded it that night. Emma, sitting in her bedroom, speaking directly to the camera, detailing everything she'd witnessed over the past 3 years. Uncle Marcus visiting twice in 18 months. Aunt Jessica canceling Christmas because she had a prior commitment. A vacation to Cancun that she'd posted all over Instagram. Her mother draining savings to pay for Grandpa's care. Her mother asking for reimbursement, being promised payment, never receiving a penny. "My mom gave up everything for Grandpa," Emma said to the camera, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "And my aunt and uncle are treating her like she's stupid, like she doesn't matter. But she does matter, and Grandpa matters, and what they're doing is wrong. I saved that video to 3 different cloud accounts. Evidence that would demolish any claim Marcus and Jessica made about doing what's best for the family. 2 days later, Jessica called. Her voice had a sharp edge I hadn't heard before. "Sarah, I'm concerned about you." "Oh? Why?" "You just seem, I don't know, stressed, paranoid maybe. Martha said you were asking her weird questions about estate law and POA." My blood went cold. Martha hadn't mentioned anything to me about talking to Jessica, which meant Jessica had been checking up on me, asking the ICU staff about my conversations. "I was just curious," I said carefully, "trying to understand how everything works." "Right. Well, Marcus and I think maybe you need some help. Not physical help. Obviously, we'll get Dad into care soon, but like mental health help. Sarah, you've been under a tremendous amount of stress. Now it's affecting your judgment." And there it was. The gaslighting. The setup. If I challenged them, if I fought back, they'd claim I was mentally unstable, unfit to make decisions, a woman who'd cracked under pressure and was making wild accusations. "Maybe you're right," I said softly. "I have been feeling overwhelmed. I can give you the name of a great therapist, someone who specializes in caregiver stress and family dynamics. Someone you know. Someone who'd report back to her, who'd document that I was emotionally fragile, who'd provide expert testimony that I was unreliable. A friend of a friend. Very good, very discreet." "Let me think about it." After we hung up, I called Patricia Chen immediately. "They're trying to establish you're mentally unstable," Patricia said grimly. "Classic move. If you challenge them, they'll claim you're delusional. Sarah, do not see any therapist they recommend. In fact, I want you to see someone we use as an expert witness, a psychologist who can evaluate you and document that you're completely competent and sound." I saw Dr. Helen Rosenberg 3 days later. She put me through a battery of tests, cognitive assessments, emotional stability evaluations, memory tests. 2 hours of proving I wasn't crazy. "Sarah, you're one of the most grounded, clear-thinking people I've assessed in years," Dr. Rosenberg said at the end. "You show normal stress responses to an abnormal situation, which is exactly what I'd expect. You're not delusional. You're not paranoid. You're reacting appropriately to discovering your family is committing crimes against your father. Can you document that?" "Already done. I'll provide a formal evaluation stating you're fully competent, emotionally stable, and capable of making sound decisions. If your siblings try to claim otherwise, my testimony will destroy that argument." The rope was tightening around Marcus and Jessica. Every move they made, every word they said, every attempt to discredit me just gave me more ammunition. But they didn't know that yet. They thought they were winning. Dad's improvement came suddenly. One Tuesday morning, the neurologist emerged from Dad's room with barely contained excitement. "The swelling's reduced significantly. His brain activity is remarkably good. We're going to try weaning him off the ventilator today." By that evening, Dad was breathing on his own. By Wednesday, he was conscious, his eyes tracking movement. By Friday, he was attempting to speak, the words garbled but present. I was there for all of it, holding his hand, encouraging him. Marcus visited once for 20 minutes. Jessica didn't come at all. She had a property closing she couldn't miss. But Patricia Chen came, and she brought her video deposition equipment. "Robert," Patricia said gently, setting up the camera at an angle that captured both her and Dad in frame. "I'm Patricia Chen, an attorney. Your daughter, Sarah, has some concerns about your financial affairs. Is it okay if I ask you some questions?" Dad's eyes went to me, then back to Patricia. He nodded, the movement small but deliberate. "Do you know someone named Marcus Mitchell?" "Son," Dad managed. "Did you give Marcus permission to manage your financial accounts?" Dad's face contorted with effort. "No. Did you sign a power of attorney giving Marcus and Jessica authority over your finances?" "No, never." The words were clearer now, his voice gaining strength. They drugged me. Papers. Couldn't see. Said, said medical forms. Patricia's voice remained calm, professional. Do you want Marcus and Jessica to have control of your finances? No, louder now, agitated. They stole everything, stole from me. Who do you want to manage your affairs? Dad's eyes found mine. He tried to lift his hand, reaching for me. So Sarah, always Sarah. She stayed. She cared. Patricia continued the deposition for 20 minutes, asking specific questions about accounts, properties, transfers. Dad confirmed he never authorized any of it, never agreed to sell properties, never wanted to gift his car or boat to his children, never signed anything willingly. When we finished, Patricia turned off the camera and smiled. Robert, that's going to make everything right. Sarah's going to fix this. Dad squeezed my hand. Fix it, he whispered. Make them pay. The miraculous recovery, as Patricia called it, changed everything. Within hours of Dad's video deposition, Marcus and Jessica were making panicked phone calls. We need to discuss Dad's care options, Marcus told me that evening, his voice tight. The facility has an opening next week. We need to move fast. Actually, I don't think Dad wants to go to a facility, I said carefully. Sarah, Dad's not capable of making that decision. The neurologist says his cognitive function is returning remarkably well. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, we have power of attorney. The decision isn't his to make. Or mine. Or yours. Marcus's voice was cold now. We're moving him Monday. If you have a problem with that, take it up with our lawyer. Sunday night, I got a call from the hospital. Marcus and Jessica had shown up with ambulance transport, claiming they had authority to transfer Dad immediately. I arrived 20 minutes later to find them in Dad's room with 2 confused EMTs and a very angry Catherine Morrison. This patient is not stable for transfer, Catherine was saying, her arms crossed. His physician has not authorized discharge. We have legal authority, Jessica snapped, waving papers. We don't need anyone's authorization. Actually, I said from the doorway, you don't have authority anymore. Everyone turned. Marcus's face went pale. What are you talking about? I stepped into the room and Patricia Chen stepped in behind me. Hello, Marcus. Jessica, I'm Patricia Chen, attorney for Robert Mitchell. I'm here to inform you that as of 3 hours ago, the court issued a temporary restraining order freezing all of Robert Mitchell's accounts and assets, pending an emergency guardianship hearing scheduled for Wednesday. You are also hereby notified that you are barred from making any medical decisions for Robert Mitchell, removing him from this facility, or accessing any of his financial accounts. Jessica's mouth opened and closed. You can't. That's not. We have power of attorney. You have a fraudulent power of attorney obtained while Mr. Mitchell was incapacitated, Patricia said calmly, which makes it invalid. We have medical records, video depositions, and extensive documentation proving your father never consented to any of the transfers you've made from his accounts. You've committed elder financial abuse. As of right now, every asset you've taken is frozen. Marcus stepped forward, his face flushed. This is ridiculous. Sarah, what did you tell them? You don't understand how any of this works. Actually, I interrupted, I understand exactly how it works. I'm a forensic accountant, Marcus, or I was before I gave up my career to care for our parents. While you were busy stealing from Dad, I was documenting every transaction, every forged signature, every fraudulent transfer. I know exactly what you did. The color drained from his face. You're what? A CPA, Senior Forensic Accountant, Brennan and Associates. I spent 15 years building cases against people who committed exactly the kind of fraud you and Jessica have been pulling. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Or did you just think I was too stupid, too exhausted, too devoted to dear old Dad to figure it out? Jessica found her voice. You can't prove anything. It's your word against ours. Actually, Patricia said, pulling out her tablet, we have quite a bit of proof. Medical records showing your father was heavily sedated during the times he supposedly signed documents. Security footage of you entering his room with a notary 20 minutes after sedation. Bank records showing systematic theft. Text messages where you both discuss the fraud explicitly. She swiped through screens. My personal favorite, Sarah's too busy playing Florence Nightingale to do the math. That was you, Marcus. Very incriminating. Marcus's face went from pale to red. You recorded us. That's illegal. Single-party consent state, I said. I can record any conversation I'm part of without your knowledge. And I did. Every phone call, every family meeting, everything. You bitch, Jessica hissed. You sneaky little... Careful, Patricia warned. You're currently being recorded on hospital security footage. Threatening behavior toward your sister won't help your case. Marcus pulled Jessica back, his lawyer brain finally engaging. We're done here. Sarah, you're making a huge mistake. When this falls apart, and it will, don't come crying to us. I won't need to, I said quietly. You can't prove anything. And who'd believe a broke nurse over two successful professionals? I quoted his words back to him. That's what you said, right, Marcus? Try me. They left, Jessica's heels clicking furiously on the linoleum. The EMTs looked at Patricia, who shook her head. Patient stays, no transfer authorized. After everyone left except Patricia and me, I sank into the chair beside Dad's bed. He was awake, had watched the whole thing with clear eyes. Good, he whispered. Fix it, Sarah. Make them pay. I will, Dad. I promise. Wednesday's emergency guardianship hearing was held in Judge Elizabeth Morrison's courtroom. Marcus and Jessica arrived with their lawyer, a man named Gerald Hutchins, who specialized in estate law and looked supremely confident. That confidence lasted approximately 15 minutes. Patricia presented the evidence systematically. First, the medical records, establishing a clear timeline of Dad's cognitive state. Your Honor, every single financial transaction occurred within 72 hours of the patient receiving heavy sedation or immediately following a major medical event. Here we have the power of attorney dated September 22nd. Medical records show Mr. Robert Mitchell received 10 milligrams of lorazepam at 10:47 a.m. Security footage shows Marcus Mitchell, Jessica Thornton, and notary public Linda Vasquez entering his room at 11:03 a.m. They exited at 11:31 a.m. Mr. Mitchell's medical record indicates he remained sedated and nonverbal until 2:15 p.m. Judge Morrison frowned, studying the documents. The patient was unconscious during the signing, heavily sedated, unable to communicate, unable to understand documents presented to him. A neurologist will testify that in this state, Mr. Mitchell could not have provided informed consent. Objection. Hutchins stood. My clients were simply helping their father manage his affairs during a difficult time. By drugging him and forging his signature? Patricia's voice was sharp. Let's be clear about what happened here. This wasn't family members managing affairs. This was systematic financial exploitation of a vulnerable elder. She pulled up the next exhibit. Bank records. Over 18 months, Marcus Mitchell and Jessica Thornton transferred $2.3 million from their father's accounts. They sold 3 properties worth over $1.8 million for $1 each to themselves. They paid themselves $15,000 each monthly as caregiver fees, despite never providing care. The actual caregiver, Sarah Mitchell, received nothing and in fact spent over $52,000 of her own money on her father's care. These are authorized transactions, Hutchins argued. My clients had power of attorney. Fraudulent POA, Patricia interrupted. We have a video deposition of Mr. Mitchell, taken after his cognitive function returned, explicitly stating he never authorized these transfers, never agreed to the POA, and specifically states he was told the documents were medical consent forms, not financial instruments. She played the video. Dad's voice, weak but clear, filled the courtroom. They drugged me, couldn't see, said medical forms. They stole from me. Judge Morrison's expression hardened. Patricia wasn't done. We also have text message evidence showing defendants discussing the fraud. She displayed the messages on the courtroom screen. Marcus's texts. Sarah's too busy playing Florence Nightingale to do the math. Jessica's response. Dad barely recognizes anyone anyway. Perfect timing for the transfers. Marcus again. POA is finalized. Notary didn't ask questions. $5,000 well spent. The judge's frown deepened with each message. We have testimony from 4 ICU nurses documenting the defendant's neglect and the plaintiff's dedication. We have character witnesses who observed family dynamics. We have a bank whistleblower who filed a suspicious activity report that was ignored. And we have this. Patricia played my recording from the conference room. Marcus and Jessica's voices, smug and cruel, discussing how they'd sell the house, how Sarah would never figure it out, how Dad was too far gone to matter. When it finished, the silence in the courtroom was absolute. Your Honor, Patricia said quietly, this is textbook elder financial abuse. These defendants systematically exploited their father's incapacity to steal his assets. They isolated him socially, controlled the narrative with medical professionals, manipulated their sister into providing free care while they collected fraudulent fees. They showed not an ounce of remorse, not a moment of care for their father's well-being. They viewed him as a financial asset to be liquidated. Hutchins stood. Your Honor, my clients were acting in good faith. Good faith? Judge Morrison's voice could have frozen fire. Mr. Hutchins, I've just listened to your clients discuss drugging their father, forging documents, and laughing about stealing from him. Which part of that suggests good faith? The power of attorney was properly notarized by a notary who was paid $5,000 to not ask questions, according to the text messages. The judge looked at Patricia. Have you located this notary? We have, Your Honor. Linda Vasquez. She's prepared to testify that Marcus Mitchell paid her specifically to notarize documents without verifying the signer's identity or capacity. She admits she never actually confirmed Robert Mitchell signed in her presence. She signed off on documents that were brought to her pre-signed. Judge Morrison closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, the fury there was barely contained. Miss Chen, what are you asking for? Emergency guardianship, granted to Sarah Mitchell immediately. All assets frozen. All fraudulent transfers reversed. Criminal referral to the district attorney's office for elder abuse, forgery, and fraud. Civil damages, including 3 years of caregiver fees for Sarah Mitchell at professional nursing rates, reimbursement of expenses, and punitive damages for intentional infliction of emotional distress. The judge didn't hesitate. Granted, all of it, effective immediately. She turned to Marcus and Jessica. You are hereby barred from any contact with your father except under direct supervision. You are barred from accessing any of his accounts or assets. Emergency guardianship is granted to Sarah Mitchell. Every transfer you've made is frozen pending full investigation. Your Honor, Hutchins tried. I'm not finished. Judge Morrison's voice was ice. I am referring this case to District Attorney Williams for criminal prosecution. What you've done isn't just unethical, it's criminal. Elder financial abuse is a felony in this state. Based on the evidence presented today, I believe there's probable cause to charge you both. Jessica started crying. Marcus sat frozen, his face gray. Furthermore, the judge continued, you will pay all of Sarah Mitchell's legal fees. You will reimburse her for every penny she's spent caring for your father, and you will pay her $280,000 in back caregiver fees, 3 years at the professional rate you were fraudulently paying yourselves. She banged the gavel. We're adjourned. Officers, please escort Mr. Mitchell and Ms. Thornton from the courtroom. They're not to have any contact with the plaintiff or Robert Mitchell. As bailiffs approached, Marcus finally found his voice. Sarah, please, we're family. No, I said, standing. Family doesn't steal from dying fathers. Family doesn't forge signatures and drain bank accounts. Family doesn't mock the person actually providing care. You stopped being family the moment you chose greed over love. Patricia gathered her documents, smiling. We'll proceed with the criminal case next. The DA's office is very interested." I walked out of that courtroom with my head high. Behind me, I could hear Jessica sobbing, Marcus arguing with his lawyer. I didn't look back. Dad was waiting in the hospital when I returned. His speech was improving daily. Did we win?" he asked. "We won, Dad. Everything's frozen, everything's going to be reversed, and they're being charged with felonies." He closed his eyes, tears seeping from the corners. Thank you, Sarah." I held his hand. "You don't have to thank me. This is what family does. Real family." The district attorney's office moved with surprising speed. 3 days after the guardianship hearing, DA Rebecca Williams held a press conference announcing charges against Marcus Mitchell and Jessica Thornton. "Elder financial abuse is one of the fastest-growing crimes in our state," Williams said, her voice firm. "Today we're sending a message that exploiting vulnerable seniors, especially one's own parents, will not be tolerated. The defendants systematically defrauded their elderly father of over $2.3 million while he was incapacitated from stroke. They forged legal documents, bribed a notary, and showed callous disregard for their father's well-being. The charges were extensive: elder financial abuse, a Class B felony carrying up to 10 years, forgery in the first degree, conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft. Each charge carried its own penalty. Combined, Marcus and Jessica faced up to 25 years in prison. The media coverage was brutal. Local news ran the story with headlines like "Attorney accused of stealing from stroke victim father" and "Siblings charged in elder abuse case. Sister was providing care for free." Marcus's face appeared on the evening news, looking haggard and defensive, as reporters shouted questions outside his office. The legal destruction spread like poison through water, contaminating everything they'd built. Marcus's law firm, Buchanan and Associates, launched an internal investigation within 48 hours of the charges. What they found turned a family scandal into a professional catastrophe. Marcus had been using similar tactics with elderly clients, convincing them to sign documents they didn't understand, making unauthorized transfers, collecting fees for services never provided. 3 clients came forward immediately once news broke, then 7, then 12. The managing partner called a firm-wide meeting. I learned about it from Patricia, who heard from a colleague who worked there. "They terminated him on the spot," Patricia told me over coffee. 52 client complaints, evidence of over $800,000 in fraudulent billing and unauthorized account access. "Sarah, your brother wasn't just stealing from your father. He'd been doing this for years." The Illinois State Bar Association moved even faster than the DA. Emergency suspension of Marcus's law license pending investigation. 2 weeks later, the full disbarment hearing. I wasn't there, but Patricia was. She said Marcus tried to argue he'd made errors in judgment but never intended harm. The disciplinary panel didn't buy it. Disbarred. Permanently. A 20-year legal career destroyed in less than a month. Jessica's destruction was more personal, but no less complete. Her husband, Tom Thornton, filed for divorce 6 days after the charges were announced. The divorce filing was public record. Patricia pulled it for me. The grounds section made for interesting reading. Petitioner has discovered that respondent engaged in systematic fraud, theft, and deception regarding family financial matters. Petitioner further discovered that respondent misappropriated approximately $400,000 of stolen funds for gambling activities unknown to petitioner. Petitioner had no knowledge of criminal activities and seeks dissolution to protect personal assets from criminal liability. $400,000. Jessica had gambled away nearly a fifth of what she'd stolen from Dad. Tom's filing included bank records showing withdrawals at casinos, online gambling accounts, cash advances. He'd been completely in the dark. The divorce was fast and vicious. Tom got the house, the cars, full custody of their 2 kids. Jessica got nothing except the legal bills and a gambling addiction her husband documented with clinical precision. But the financial destruction wasn't over. The judge's order to reverse all transfers meant Marcus and Jessica had to return everything they'd stolen, every penny, with interest. The problem was they'd already spent most of it. Marcus's downtown condo, purchased with $400,000 from Dad's liquidated stock portfolio, immediate lien placed on the property. The mortgage company started foreclosure proceedings when Marcus couldn't make payments. Jessica's house, bought with $350,000 of stolen funds. Tom got it in the divorce, but it had a lien against it for the fraudulent purchase price. He sold it immediately to escape the legal quagmire. Dad's Porsche, which Marcus had gifted himself, and immediately sold for $85,000. The buyer was located. The sale was voided. Marcus had to return the car or pay current market value, $92,000 accounting for appreciation. The sailboat Jessica took, sold to fund her gambling. She had to repay $156,000. 3 rental properties sold for $1 each. Current market value, $1.8 million combined. Marcus and Jessica had sold 2 of them and leveraged the third for loans. Untangling that mess took months of legal work, but the judge was merciless. Fair market value must be returned immediately. They couldn't pay. Neither of them had liquid assets anymore. Everything was leveraged, spent, gambled away, or frozen in legal proceedings. The court placed liens on everything they owned: bank accounts, frozen, credit cards, maxed out, and frozen. Any income garnished at 75% until the debt was satisfied. Marcus tried to file for bankruptcy. The judge denied it. You cannot discharge debts incurred through criminal fraud, the ruling stated. The defendants must make full restitution before any debt relief will be considered. Their credit scores collapsed. Marcus went from an 810 credit score to 487 in 6 weeks. Jessica dropped to 502. No bank would loan them money. No landlord would rent to them without cash deposits they couldn't afford. I watched it happen with a strange sense of detachment. This wasn't revenge. This was consequence, natural, inevitable consequence of their choices. The court ordered them to pay my legal fees, $47,000. Patricia had worked hundreds of hours building the case, every hour documented, every expense logged. Marcus and Jessica received the bill with a 30-day payment deadline. They couldn't pay that either. More liens, more garnishment. Then came the caregiver fees. The judge had been clear. 3 years of professional nursing care at standard rates. I'd provided 24/7 care, essentially. 3 shifts per day, 365 days per year, 3 years. The calculation was stark, $280,000. Your sister provided services you were being paid for, the judge told Marcus and Jessica at the restitution hearing. She gave up her career, her savings, her time, while you collected fraudulent fees. That debt is owed. Immediately. More liens, more garnishment. Every paycheck either of them earned would be decimated for years. Decades, probably, given the total amount owed. Marcus tried to get a job at a smaller firm. No one would hire him. Disbarred attorney charged with fraud? He ended up working as a legal document reviewer, making $25 per hour. 75% of that went to garnishment. Jessica couldn't get hired anywhere in real estate. Her broker's license was revoked pending the criminal trial. She ended up working retail, minimum wage, watching every penny disappear to court-ordered payments before she could touch it. The DA offered them a deal. Plead guilty to reduce charges, accept 18 months suspended sentence conditional on full restitution, and 5 years probation. If they made payments on schedule, proved genuine rehabilitation, they'd avoid prison time. If they missed a payment, violated probation, or committed any further offense, the full sentence would be imposed. 6 years in state prison. They took the deal. They had no choice. The sentencing hearing was brief. Both of them pleaded guilty. Both made tearful statements about poor judgment and family misunderstanding. Neither mentioned what they'd actually done. Neither apologized to Dad. Judge Morrison wasn't moved. You exploited your father's vulnerability for personal gain. You showed no remorse until you were caught. This suspended sentence is an act of mercy you don't deserve. If you violate the terms even once, you will serve every day of the 6-year sentence. Court is adjourned." I sat in the gallery and watched them shuffle out, their shoulders slumped, their expensive clothes looking shabby now. They'd lost everything: status, career, money, family, respect. They'd gambled it all on stealing from their dying father, and they'd lost. Dad's recovery was nothing short of miraculous. With proper care, proper medication, and the stress of his children's betrayal lifted, Robert Mitchell began to heal. 6 weeks after the guardianship hearing, he moved from the ICU to a regular room. 8 weeks after that, he transferred to an acute rehabilitation facility. 3 months post-stroke, he came home. Not to a nursing facility, home. To the house he'd lived in for 40 years, the house Jessica had tried to steal, with me and Emma there to care for him properly. He walked with a cane. His speech still had rough patches, words sometimes escaping him, but his mind was sharp, sharper than it had been in years. The cloud of depression that had hung over him since Mom's death lifted. He laughed again. He told stories about building his business, about his early days with Mom, about watching his children grow up. "I thought they were good people," he said one evening, sitting in his favorite chair. "I thought I raised them right." "You did, Dad. They made their own choices. But you..." He reached for my hand, his grip still weak but determined. "You chose to stay. You chose kindness. That's not luck, Sarah. That's character. I'm proud of you." I cried then, quietly, letting 3 years of exhaustion and fear and vindication wash over me. Marcus and Jessica never apologized. Not once. Not to Dad, not to me, not to Emma. Instead, they blamed me. The call started 2 months after sentencing. Marcus first, his voice tight with controlled rage. "You destroyed everything, Sarah. Our careers, our lives. Was it worth it?" "I didn't destroy anything, Marcus. You did that yourself. We were family. You could have handled this privately. But no, you had to involve lawyers, press charges, ruin us publicly. You stole from our dying father. What did you think would happen?" He hung up. Jessica tried a different approach. Tears, manipulation, guilt. "Sarah, please. I know we made mistakes, but we're still family. Can't we work something out? I'm losing my kids. Tom won't let me see them unsupervised because of the gambling. I'm working retail, barely making rent. This is destroying me. You destroyed yourself when you chose gambling over integrity. That's not fair. What's not fair is that you spent $400,000 of Dad's money at casinos while I was changing his bedpan." She didn't call again after that. The final confrontation happened 6 months after sentencing, on the courthouse steps after a restitution review hearing. Marcus and Jessica had just been informed they were behind on payments and faced probation violation charges if they didn't catch up immediately. I was leaving the courthouse when Marcus grabbed my arm. "You self-righteous," he choked on the word. "You destroyed us. Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted?" I pulled my arm free, looked him in the eye. "No, Marcus, you destroyed yourselves the moment you forged his signature. I just made sure you paid for it. We're facing prison." Jessica's voice was shrill, her designer clothes replaced by cheap knockoffs. "We've lost everything. Our homes, our careers, our families. You chose that," I said calmly. "Every single step. You chose to drug Dad and forge documents. You chose to steal millions. You chose to mock me while I cared for him. You made every choice that led here. We're still family." Jessica grabbed my shoulders. "Doesn't that mean anything?" I stepped back. "No, you're felons who stole from your dying father while your sister sacrificed everything to care for him. You're criminals who showed no remorse until you faced consequences. Family doesn't do what you did. So what are we to you now?" Marcus's voice broke. "Nothing," I said. "You're nothing to me. You made sure of that." I walked away. Behind me, Jessica was crying. Marcus was cursing. I didn't look back. There was nothing there worth seeing anymore. That night, Dad asked me about the encounter. "Do you regret it?" he asked. "Turning them in? Destroying their lives?" I thought about it, really thought about it. 3 years of caregiving, $52,000 of my money, my career sacrificed, Emma's childhood disrupted, and Marcus and Jessica laughing about it, calling me stupid, stealing everything while I held Dad's hand through recovery. "No," I said finally. "They earned every consequence. I just made sure justice was served." Dad nodded. "Good, that's my girl." 6 months after sentencing, I opened Mitchell & Associates, a forensic accounting firm specializing in elder financial abuse investigation. The office was small, 2 rooms above a coffee shop, but it was mine. Elena, the ICU nurse who'd started everything, became my first hire, chief patient advocate. Her job was to train medical professionals on recognizing financial abuse, connect victims with resources, and serve as expert witness in cases we took on. "I've been waiting for this," Elena said on her first day. "I've seen too many families torn apart by this, too many patients who couldn't speak up. We're going to change that." Word spread quickly. Patricia Chen referred clients. Catherine Morrison sent families our way. Within 3 months, we had 12 active cases. Within 6 months, we'd helped recover over $3 million for elderly victims. Each case felt personal. Each elderly parent we helped felt like vindication for Dad. Each adult child we prosecuted felt like justice for what Marcus and Jessica had done. Emma thrived. Dad, now fully recovered and managing his business again, established a college fund for her, full scholarship to any school she wanted. She chose pre-law at Northwestern, determined to become an elder law attorney like Patricia. "I want to help people like you helped Grandpa," she told me. "I want to make sure families like ours get justice." I was so proud I could barely speak. Dad changed his will, working with Patricia to ensure it was ironclad. Sarah Mitchell, 80% of the estate, including the house, the business, and the investment accounts Marcus and Jessica had tried to steal. Emma, 10%, accessible when she turned 25. Marcus and Jessica, 0, with one exception. The will included a clause. Marcus Mitchell and Jessica Thornton will receive equal shares of 10% only after they have made full restitution of all stolen funds, completed their probation without violation, demonstrated genuine rehabilitation through documented community service, and provided written apologies, acknowledging their crimes without excuse or justification. Until such time, their shares remain in trust, inaccessible. "They'll never meet those conditions," I told Dad. "I know," he said, "but I'm giving them the chance. Whether they take it is up to them." I started teaching. Once a month, I'd go to local hospitals and run training sessions for nurses, social workers, patient advocates. How to spot financial elder abuse. The rooms were always packed. At every session, I told the same story. My story. About a nurse named Elena, who whispered 5 words that changed everything. About a family destroyed by greed and rebuilt through justice. "If you see something," I'd tell them, "say something. You might be the only person standing between a vulnerable elder and total financial destruction. Be the Elena in someone's story." Because that's what this was really about. Not revenge, not punishment, justice, protection, making sure what happened to Dad never happened to anyone else. That was my transformation. From forensic accountant to caregiver to warrior for the vulnerable. And I'd never been more certain I was exactly where I was supposed to be. They thought I was weak because I was kind. They thought I was stupid because I cared. Marcus and Jessica looked at a woman changing bedpans and saw a servant, a fool, someone too exhausted and too devoted to notice what was happening right in front of her. They learned the hardest way possible, that the most dangerous person in the room is the one who's been watching, documenting, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Here's what I learned through all of this. Family isn't about blood. It's about honor. It's about showing up. It's about sacrifice without expectation of reward. The moment Marcus and Jessica chose greed over love, the moment they decided their father's bank account mattered more than his well-being, they stopped being family. They became strangers wearing familiar faces. If you're watching this and you see an elderly parent being isolated by one sibling, speak up. Ask questions. Document what you observe. You might be the only person who can stop what's happening. If you're a nurse or caregiver who sees something wrong, a family member who visits only when signing papers, an elder who tries to communicate distress but gets dismissed, be the Elena in someone's story. Your whisper might change everything. Which city are you from? Drop it in the comments below. I want to know this message is reaching people everywhere because elder abuse happens everywhere. If you agree that I did the right thing, that protecting vulnerable parents from predatory children matters more than keeping family secrets, leave a like. Share this story. Let people know that justice is possible. Every night when I check on Dad before bed, he squeezes my hand and whispers, "Thank you." His voice is steady now. His eyes are clear. He's home, he's safe, and he's surrounded by people who actually love him. That gratitude, that peace, that justice. It's worth more than any inheritance they tried to steal.